Hi, it's Ms. Barnhart, and today's topic is ecology. In today's lesson, we will first look at ecosystem structure, as well as discuss how energy moves through an ecosystem. It's good to start with a basic refresher vocabulary. Ecology is defined as the study of the interaction of organisms and their environments. We call the living portions of the environment the biotic factors, and the non-living influences the abiotic factors. You know that an organism is one single living thing, like an individual squirrel. All of the organisms of one species that live in the same location at one given time is called a population. You can see a population of a particular species of squirrel pictured here. All of the populations of organisms living in an area is called a biological community. These are all of the biotic factors. The squirrels are here, as are the trees and all the other producers, the worms and decomposers and detritivores, the butterflies and any other insects, all the birds and any other animals. When all of the organism and the abiotic factors are factored in, this is called an ecosystem. Can you see all of the community members shown here? Squirrels, trees, owls, worms, butterflies and insects, as well as the abiotic factors of the sun and the wind and the rain. The most significant influence on the distribution of organisms on both land and water is climate. Climate is the long-term weather conditions in a given area. It includes temperature, precipitation, sunlight, and wind. Climate and other factors influence where individual species can live. Based on the temperature and available water, have characteristic plants and animals that inhabit the area. These major life zones are called biomes. Terrestrial biomes are typically dominated by dominant vegetation, while aquatic biomes are described by conditions of the natural environment. Natural selection favors organisms with adaptations for obtaining nutrients most efficiently in each geographic location. The tails of New World monkeys are adaptations that assist them in climbing trees and obtaining food in the rainforests of South America. The whale's blubber insulates and helps maintain body temperature in the cool waters of the northern Atlantic. The lion's coloration allows for camouflage on the African savanna. Like the whale, the penguin has blubber to insulate, but can you see how the counter shading can allow for camouflage in the open ocean? Regardless of the organisms that live in each area, we can trace the flow of energy as it moves through an ecosystem. The initial source of all energy in all terrestrial and most aquatic food chains is sunlight. The initial source of energy in all terrestrial and most aquatic food chains is sunlight. Let's take a look at a sample food chain. The trophic structure describes the flow of energy. The transfer of food up the trophic levels is called a food chain. Let's take a look at a sample food chain. The first trophic level of the food chain captures the sun's energy using photosynthesis. The second trophic level is an animal that eats a plant, in this case a grasshopper. We call animals that eat plants herbivores. The energy is passed from the herbivore to the third trophic level. This is a carnivore, an animal that eats another animal, in this case a mouse. Finally, the top carnivore in this food chain occupies the fourth trophic level. This food chain has 4 trophic levels. Rarely will one have more than 5. The first trophic level is called the primary producer. The second trophic level, a primary consumer. The third level, a secondary consumer. And the fourth level, a tertiary consumer. You may be wondering why food chains are so short. There are actually two different hypotheses here. The energetic hypothesis states that only 10% of the energy entering a trophic level can be passed on to the rest. Having more than 4 or 5 levels would require too many producers to sustain the top carnivores. The dynamic stability hypothesis states that longer food chains are less stable because they would have lower numbers of organisms on the higher trophic levels. This would not allow recovery for those top predators from disturbances. We can see this better illustrated if we place this into a pyramid. Note that only 10% of the energy of each level is transferred to the next. The remainder is used for life activities and given off as heat. The shape should actually be less triangular, with each level being represented as a bar 1/10 the size of the previous one. Suppose there are a million joules of sunlight. Only 1% of this energy, or 10,000 joules, would be accessible to the primary producers. Since only 10% is transferred to the next level, only 1,000 joules is available on this level. This translates to 100 joules of energy for the secondary consumers and 10 joules for the tertiary consumers. Should there be a quaternary consumer, only 1 joule of energy would be accessible to them. Can you see why our eating choices can determine how many people our planet can support? Finally, let's take a look at the decomposers and saprotrophs, not shown on the food chain or in the trophic level pyramid. These organisms eat or absorb decaying organic matter. Examples are earthworms, fungi such as mushrooms, and various bacteria of decay. Finally, let's take a look at the concept of productivity. Primary productivity is defined as the amount of solar energy that is converted into chemical energy during photosynthesis. Gross primary productivity is the total amount of photosynthetic output, but not all is stored as biomass, as some of the energy is used for life production of the producers. Net primary productivity can be calculated by subtracting the energy used for respiration from the gross productivity. Let's examine a graph that shows how productivity changes as a function of depth in a pond. Note that the highest productivity is closest to the surface, but the productivity decreases with depth because less sunlight is available as you increase in depth, so less photosynthesis occurs. At a depth of about 25 meters or so, the net primary productivity is 0. This means that the gross productivity was equal to respiration at this point. Below about 30 meters of depth, the net productivity is 0, since the respiration exceeds the product of respiration. Light may not penetrate much past this depth of lake at all. It's important to remember that plants undergo both photosynthesis and respiration during the daylight, but only respiration during the dark hours. I hope that's helpful.